on the first and third Sundays of the month to take the prospect book into the class and distribute the prospects so that people can make contact with them. We're asking you to do that twice a month. And it wouldn't have to be the first and third. You can work that into your own class schedule, but most people need a track to run on, and so that's the reason we're trying to give you one. But the first and third Sundays, we want the outreach leader to take the prospects in and distribute them. Now, I want to draw a little diagram up here for you that I hope that will help you as you think through this, because, you see, I'm of the conviction that if we're going to reach more people, we got to stay in contact with them more often. Most people are not going to come here because we contact them one time. Some will, but that will be few. I think we have to be, I think when we visit people, we can't hit and run. That is, we go hit them one time with the gospel, we go hit them one time, come to church, and then we run. They never see us again. I don't want us to have a hit and run outreach mentality. I want us to have a hit and stick outreach mentality. And it's something like this. Here you have the church, steeple on top. And, you know, in the church, we've got a lot of people and a lot of Sunday school classes. We're made up of a lot of different dynamics here. But over here is the world. And in the world, you got all kind of people as well. And, man, if you think some of them's weird in the church, you ought to get out here and look around a little bit. Just go down to the airport and sit a while. Folks, between the church and the world, there's a great chasm between the two. You see, the world does not think like the church. And God help us that we don't think like the world. But you see, the chasm between the church and the world has gotten wider and deeper because the world has moved more and more away from a biblical worldview. Now, there was a day, a few decades ago, I'm old enough to remember it, there was a day when even lost people held the basic tenets of the Bible. That is, they believed the Bible was true. They believed God created the earth. They believed they were a sinner. They believed Jesus died for their sins. They believed there was a heaven to gain and a hell to shun. Now, they may never trust Christ. They may love living in sin. They may never trust Christ, but at least they believed those basic fundamental biblical beliefs that we believe. They had at least the basic concept of a biblical worldview. That's no longer true. You see, back in those days when you went out to witness, all you had to do was get them saved. Today, if you go out and witness, you have to get them lost before you can get them saved. Back in those days, they at least knew that they were lost. Well, you know, getting saved, 50% of getting saved is knowing you're lost and need Jesus. And so that's the reason I say all we had to do back in those days was get them saved. But today, we have to tell them, no, you're lost. We have to help them to see that so they know that they do need to be saved from their sins and that Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. Now because this gap keeps getting wider and wider and deeper, we've got to bridge the gap. There must be a bridge for them to walk across from out of the world and into the church. So let me just illustrate it this way. Let's say we've got a class that's a 30-year-old class. They're in their 30s, okay? We're going to say right here, there's a couple that's in their 30s out in the world and they're lost. And over here, here's a Sunday school class that's in their 30s. And this Sunday school class, thank God, has an outreach leader. It has a prospect book that has a name, address, and phone number of this couple. And so they're going to try to reach this couple. They've got to build a bridge, though, from the church to the world. Because remember, Jesus told us to go. He didn't tell them to come. It's our job to go to them. The reason they don't come to us, by the way, is because, folks, whatever your worldview is, can I tell you something? You hang out with people who basically hold to your worldview. That's the reason they don't come to us. They don't hang out with, their worldview's different from ours, and consequently, probably their best friends are not Christians. Their best friends are probably people that have a worldview like unto themselves. And by the way, that's the reason the church doesn't go to them much either. Because you see, our value system's different, our worldview's different, and because of that, we're not hanging out with them much. And yet, we're told to go to them. So, when this outreach leader in this 30-year-old class gets this couple's name, address, and phone number, the first step in reaching this couple is, and to building a bridge, is to go make a visit to them. So that's the first step in building the bridge across this gap to them. And then after that first visit, What we'd like to see implemented here is our MTV strategy. The next week, we're going to go and we're going to make a contact by mail. We keep postcards in the Sunday school office for that very reason. The next week, we're going to telephone them. Somebody's going to give them a call. The next week, we're going to visit them again. MTV. All right, you can see we still hadn't bridged the gap yet, so what are we going to keep doing? We're just going to keep doing it over again. MTV, 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 until we can build a bridge that this couple can walk across and into our class. And we're not going to do that with one visit, in all likelihood. It's going to take many visits, and that's the reason the outreach leader needs to take the prospect book and on the first and third Sundays of every month, take it in so that we can continue mail, telephone, visit. Mail, telephone, visit. I've got some good success stories to tell you with it, and I don't have time. But it's going to take some tenaciousness on our part to stick with it. And that's the reason it's imperative that an outreach leader understands this, and it's imperative that an outreach leader is prepared on the Sundays to do this so that we can get our people doing the MTV. By the way, outreach leaders, you're going to want everybody to go visiting, but can I say something? Everybody's not going visiting. I wish they would. I'm like you. But some people are just so afraid to do that. So what are we going to do with those people? We're just going to say, well, they can't be involved in our outreach program. Yes, they can. They can mail something. They can telephone somebody and talk with them. I mean, my philosophy is use people where they're usable. Because if you don't, you just discard them and say, well, they'll just have to sit over on the sidelines while the rest of us play the game. So use people where they're usable. And I also have a conviction, if they mail a while and then they telephone a while, I believe they may visit a while, because after you make a few phone calls, you've heard it all. You might as well just do it in person as in over the phone. I believe it'll help them to build to that. Okay. First and third Sundays, take those prospect books in. The second Sunday of the month, we're asking everyone, every outreach leader, to have someone in the class share a testimony. Now, let me tell you why we want to have you to share a testimony. There's a few reasons. Number one is because we ought to know each other on a spiritual level. It's amazing to me. We know where we work. We know what our hobbies are. We know who our favorite sports teams are. But sometimes we really don't know each other spiritually. And so I think it's good that once a month somebody in the class takes that 10 minutes and shares their testimony. Second reason that I want to suggest that we do that is because, you see, when this person shares their testimony, they're having to articulate how they got saved. Well, if they can stand before that class and articulate that, they can probably knock on the door and articulate it. We're actually helping them to be a better witness by allowing them to have to think through and then be able to verbalize how they got saved. So it's going to help us there. And then the third thing is, I mean, let's face it, when you hear somebody stand up and talk about how they got saved, it fuels evangelism in your own heart. You know, if they talked about a certain person that witnessed to them and this person just stayed after them and stayed after them, and finally they got saved, you're thinking, yeah, I know somebody I need to stay after and stay after. When you hear someone's testimony, it fuels evangelism in your own heart. So for those three reasons, we want to ask that on maybe the second Sunday of the month, you have someone share a testimony. And then we're saying on the fourth Sunday of the month, we want you to discuss your strategic mission partnership, your SMP. Now, if you don't have one yet, we want to work with you on that. And even this past week, I was in an hour-and-a-half meeting with Danny Singleton talking about how that we can do a better job of helping our classes find an SMP. And so if you don't have one, talk to me, talk to one of our education staff. We're going to try to help you with that. But what we'd like to say is at least once a month, you ought to be talking about your SMP, who it is, the next maybe trip, what kind of project you're going to be doing, what kind of money you may need to raise. It may be that you just need to take that time and pray for your missionary that you got the SMP with, but at least once a month we ought to be talking about that if in fact we're going to be in Acts 1:8 Sunday School, because if we don't ever talk about it, again, it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So we're asking you to do that at least once a month, and in this little track we're giving you, we're suggesting the fourth Sunday of the month. Okay, let me close real quickly. The 10-minute outreach emphasis, I want you to understand something. Your 10 minutes is absolutely critical, outreach leader. Because if you're going to lead that class to be involved in the Great Commission, you must have some time before the class to speak with them. It's absolutely critical that you do it. And don't let someone steal your time. You need that 10 minutes, outreach leaders. Secondly, I want to say to you, outreach leader, this time is so critical, you must be prepared. Outreach leaders, you should be just as prepared for your 10 minutes as the teacher should be for his 30 minutes, as Johnny should be for his sermon, as the choir should be for their special song, as the soloist should be for her song. If that's what God's called you to do, I'm going to say something, dear friend, you ought to give it your very best shot. You need to show up prepared. Don't just show up here and wing it. Because if you're going to waste the 10 minutes, let's just give it to the teacher and let them teach 10 more minutes. Let's give it to the care group leaders, let them have 10 more minutes and utilize it better than just to waste it. So you need to show up, and you should have already thought through and been prepared before you ever get here for that 10-minute time. So my last two statements is simply this. If Sunday school is not the Great Commission arm of the church, then we have none. That's our job. We're to be a Great Commission entity in this church. And we must have Great Commission leaders in every Sunday school class to do that we call outreach leaders. And then lastly, let me say, if the outreach leaders are not leading our classes to be personally involved, then our Sunday school will fail in accomplishing the Great Commission. The only way we're going to get it done is to roll up our sleeves and get dirty in the work of witnessing to people, trying to reach people with the good news of Jesus Christ. Thank you. I appreciate you. May God bless you as you serve him as an outreach leader in our Sunday school.